My name is Daniel Carter. I am 27 years old, and for most of my life, I believed I understood the people closest to me, especially my sister Emily. But I was wrong in a way that would take me years to realize. I live in a small apartment a few blocks from campus, a quiet place with old wooden floors, pale walls, and windows that let in soft morning light. Most days, my life looked simple from the outside, just classes, work, bills, late-night studying, and coffee that always seemed to go cold before I had time to finish it. But behind that routine was a constant pressure I rarely admitted to anyone. Emily is 6 years older than me, and ever since I was a kid, she had always seemed calm, reserved, and hard to read. She wasn't cruel, and she was never openly unkind, but she wasn't warm in the way I expected people who love you to be. She didn't hug often, didn't talk much about feelings, and rarely said the kind of comforting things I secretly wanted to hear. While other siblings laughed loudly, argued over stupid things, and seemed naturally close, Emily and I always felt different, like there was an invisible wall between us that I never knew how to break. As a child, I remember watching her carefully. Always hoping for signs that she really cared about what I was feeling, what I was afraid of, what I dreamed about, but most of the time, all I got was her usual quiet expression and a few calm words that never felt like enough. If I was nervous before an exam, she would just say, "Do your best." If I was upset about something, she would tell me to sleep and think clearly in the morning. She always sounded practical, never emotional, and because of that, I slowly convinced myself that she simply didn't care as deeply as I needed her to. That belief stayed with me as I got older. Even when I moved out and started college, I carried that same quiet disappointment with me. I told myself Emily was just one of those people who kept her distance. Someone who cared in a vague, surface-level way, but never enough to really be present in the hard parts of my life. And yet, if I'm honest, there were always small things that didn't match that version of her. Things I noticed but never truly thought about. During finals week, I would sometimes find a note in my bag that simply said, "You've got this." On difficult months, there would be a little money left on my desk with no explanation. More than once, I came home to find groceries in my kitchen after casually mentioning that I was low on cash. Some mornings, after a night of barely sleeping, I would find coffee and snacks left near my laptop as if someone had quietly passed through my life while I wasn't looking. I saw those things, of course I did, but I never let myself attach too much meaning to them. I told myself they were just small gestures, not love, not the kind that mattered. College became harder than I expected. There were weeks when I felt like I was holding my entire life together with nothing but caffeine and stress. I worked part-time, studied until my eyes hurt, worried constantly about tuition, rent, and bills, and kept pretending I was managing everything better than I really was. I hated asking for help. I hated feeling like I couldn't carry my own weight. So even when I was exhausted, even when I felt close to breaking, I kept smiling and saying I was fine. Emily never pushed me to open up, and somehow, that annoyed me even more. Part of me wanted her to force the truth out of me, to sit me down and say, "I know you're not okay," the way people do in movies or emotional family stories, but she never did. She would just look at me a little longer than usual, ask if I had eaten, and then quietly leave something useful behind, as if that was her way of speaking. At the time, I didn't understand it. I thought if love was real, it should be obvious. I thought care should sound louder than silence. Then one rainy afternoon, everything changed. I came home from campus tired, soaked, and frustrated after a long day, expecting nothing more than another evening of unfinished assignments and cheap instant coffee. But the moment I walked into my apartment, I noticed an envelope sitting neatly in the middle of my kitchen table. It looked plain and unimportant at first, but something about it made my stomach tighten. I picked it up, opened it, and immediately felt my hands begin to shake. Inside were bank documents and tuition records showing that my remaining tuition balance had been paid in full. Not partially. Not delayed. Completely paid. For a few seconds, I just stood there staring at the numbers, convinced I had misunderstood something. It didn't make sense. I hadn't received any scholarship update, no financial aid change, no loan approval, nothing that could explain what I was seeing. I called the bank almost immediately, my heart pounding the entire time. After being transferred and placed on hold, a woman finally confirmed that the payment had been made through a direct deposit from a private account. When I asked who sent it, she apologized and said she couldn't tell me. I thanked her, hung up, and stood there in silence, holding the papers while the rain tapped against the windows. At first, I tried to think of anyone else it could have been. A relative. An old family friend. Some forgotten financial arrangement. But none of it made sense, and slowly, one name rose in my mind. Emily. The moment I thought of her, something inside me shifted. Suddenly, memories I had ignored for years began coming back with painful clarity. The birthday cards with folded cash tucked carefully inside. The time my winter coat was falling apart and a new one somehow appeared a week later. The groceries. The notes. The coffee. The snacks. The little things I had always brushed off. For the first time, I saw them not as random acts, but as part of a pattern. A quiet, steady pattern of someone making sure I never completely fell apart. And the truth hit me hard, because if Emily had really done this, then it meant I had misunderstood her for years. It meant that while I was quietly resenting her for not loving me loudly, she had been loving me in every silent way she knew how. 2 nights later, I went to see her. She was standing in her kitchen when I arrived, rinsing a coffee mug in the sink while rain slid down the windows behind her. I held the papers tightly in my hand, my chest so tense it almost hurt, and after a few seconds of silence, I finally asked, "Emily, did you pay my tuition?" She turned and looked at me, and for a moment she said nothing. Then, with that same calm expression I had known my whole life, she simply said, "Yes." I couldn't speak. I just stared at her while everything inside me felt like it was collapsing. She dried her hands on a towel and stepped a little closer. "Daniel," she said softly, "I never wanted you to feel weak. I never wanted you to think you owed me something. I know how hard you work, and I know how much it matters to you to stand on your own. I just didn't want to watch you drown when I had a way to help." By then, my eyes were already burning. Years of assumptions, disappointment, and quiet resentment were crashing down all at once, and before I could even gather my thoughts, she looked at me and said the words that changed everything. "You always thought I was distant because I'm quiet," she said. "But I've always loved you, Daniel. I just never knew how to say it in the way you wanted to hear it. So I tried to show it instead." That was it. That was the moment I broke. I started crying in a way I hadn't in years, standing there in her kitchen feeling ashamed, grateful, and heartbroken all at once. I had spent so long believing she didn't care, when the truth was that she had been one of the only people making sure I stayed afloat. And Emily, without saying anything dramatic, just stepped forward and held me while I cried. After that night, something between us changed. Not all at once, and not in some perfect movie way, but in a real and lasting way. We started talking more, spending more time together, and slowly undoing years of misunderstanding. We shared old memories, laughed about things we had both seen differently. And for the first time, I understood that Emily's silence had never meant indifference. It had always meant love, just a quieter kind of love than I knew how to recognize. Now, when I think of my sister, I no longer think of distance or emotional emptiness. I think of patience, sacrifice, and a kind of devotion so quiet I almost missed it completely. She taught me something I will never forget. Love does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it hides in the smallest gestures, in the ordinary moments, in the people who say the least but give the most. And once you finally see it, you can never look at them the same way again. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any new content.